Now on to something much more exciting, and that is the real estate transfer tax, the so-called millionaires tax. Start talking about it, sure. Set the table. Why do we even care about this?
So this affects properties over $1 million, basically affects pretty much every property in Downbeach. It was a flat 1% on anything over $1 million. You have a real estate transfer fee, which we always had, and then a supplemental fee, which is the mansion tax. You go over 2 million to 2.5 million, it doubles. It's 2% tax on top of the real estate transfer tax. But look, if you're over 3.5 million, it's 3.5%. So you got a hefty sale price for a property, and then you get this extra tax on it. The tax is now supposed to be paid for by the seller, not the buyer. So now the seller has all kinds of fees. They have the commissions that they're paying, real estate transfer tax, and then they have this mansion tax, which could be as much as 3.5%. This does not apply to land. A lot of the properties being sold that are, around $1 million to $2 million are being torn down. You have a property that's being sold as a tear down. And then what the sellers are saying is, hey, I don't want to pay this mansion tax. I want you to tear my house down before we close. Now think about the liability with that and the complication. A house that's going to be torn down, a mansion tax is going to be added to it unless that house is torn down. So then you complicate your contract. Okay, but what if they start tearing it down and then we don't close and then they don't have money and then I move my furniture out? It's great for the attorneys because they have to get involved and they write all kinds of things, non-refundable deposits, things like that into their contracts. It does complicate it, but it is a kind of loophole on how not to pay the real estate transfer tax. So you can understand why sellers are like, wow, I'm paying all this money. And then there's also real estate commissions. And so it's a lot coming out of their net. We're seeing a lot of sellers now, whether they're builders or whatever, they are going to their realtors before they will agree on the price. They list their house and then they get an offer. And then they say, hey, I need it's called a net sheet. A net sheet lists the sale price minus all the deductions, real estate transfer fee, graduated tax, commissions, closing costs. The property was listed for a certain price. We bring in an offer. It was a very respectable offer. The seller says, hey, I want a net sheet. Not only did they reject our offer, they then raised their asking price. They raised their asking price because they want to cover those costs.
Oh, so without that net sheet, they may not have been reminded that that's a pretty big number.
If you're a seller and you are a non-resident in New Jersey, there's a 2% non-resident tax. If you live in Pennsylvania, you're selling your beach house. Yes, there's another 2% that gets paid to the state.
Somebody outside the state of New Jersey, they're getting hit extra hard.
Yes, there is a 2% non-resident tax. That's based on the sale price, the gross sale price, not the net price. It's based on the sale price. So there's an extra 2% that non-residents are paying. And a lot of our homeowners here are from the Philly area, a lot are from Pennsylvania, and they're paying an extra 2%. So when you do that net sheet, there's so many deductions. And that's another reason why these prices keep on climbing. But what's happening is the buyers are like, I'm not going to continue to pay these higher and higher prices. And it's not sustainable, meaning there's a slowdown of properties being sold. So that's where yes.
How many realtors are being properly trained? How many realtors are up to speed on this stuff? Are they being trained on a monthly basis to keep up with these pretty onerous new rules?
Yes. So they are being trained. Wait, does everybody attend the meetings? Do they pay attention? I think some agents just don't make it into the office for their meetings.
That could cost a buyer or a seller an awful lot of money. That's crazy. How are you choosing realtors? Do they know about this stuff? Do they know about like escrow accounts? Are they following along with any of this stuff? Training is a good thing, and there should be more training of realtors.
When a realtor gives a presentation for a listing and you're in the conversation about the the list price. That is the time when you are supposed to educate the seller about this, because the last thing you want is to do all kinds of work, get at the closing table and have them look at, they're like, what's this 2%? You know, why is there this extra 2%? You don't want that surprise. Now it's an uncomfortable conversation because of course they're also looking at their commission and they're looking well, how can I cut this? Well, I can't negotiate with the state. Oh, maybe I'll just cut your commission, Sherry. And then, you know, that's a whole other conversation. Yes.
We just got another fax that came in for Sherry Lilienfeld of eXp Realty. They want to remain anonymous. They say, we watch the Sherry podcast, the real estate podcast on Downbeach Buzz all the time at our weekly meetings at our brokerage. That is true.
Yeah, great. I love it. And I want all the realtors to be educated, and we should all be saying the same thing. If we're not all saying the same thing, I think that doesn't look good for our profession. Okay.
Dear Sherry of eXp Realty,
Go ahead.
are realtors and brokers allowed to call you, reach out to you, and figure out a way of getting on the Downbeach Buzz podcast, Sherry?
Yes. And we work very nicely with our colleagues, and we are available to jointly promote listings with the permission of the listing agent and the owner.
And anybody on the sidelines, any sellers looking to sell, you might want to talk to your realtor, your agent, the one you already hired, and say, why don't you call that Sherry and whoever that guy is that always interrupts her from Downbeach Buzz, the podcast. More people will consider it now that they realize the market is tightened somewhat. The buyer's market, seller's market, balanced. I lean towards it's more of a buyer's market because there's so much new inventory that's sitting a little too long on the market, right?
Yeah, sure. Because then sellers, and look, they dug their heels in. They want to cover that mansion tax. But if they sit on it too long, then maybe I could give a little here.
That revelation a few moments ago when you said that if you're an out-of-state homeowner with a second home, that you get whacked doubly hard. That's crazy.
It is painful. And like I said, it's a very painful conversation. There is one way to avoid it. If you are doing a 1031 exchange, that means if your property was an investment property, i.e. if you rented it out for 2 years and you have proof that you were renting it out, and then you're going to have a third-party intermediary take the money and reinvest it in another rental property, that is a way to avoid that.
Yeah, the 1031 exchange, right? Is that what it is? Yeah.
Yes.